The fluorescent lights of Orem and Vale's break room hummed overhead as Callista Rose Monroe mechanically stirred her third cup of cold coffee. Her brown hair, hastily pulled into a messy bun, had started to come undone, but she didn't bother fixing it. What was the point? No one looked at her anyway. She glanced at her watch. 1:47 p.m. Late lunch again. The break room was mercifully empty, just the way she preferred it. Grabbing her worn leather bag, she pulled out a container with a wilted salad and settled into her usual corner spot, the one partially hidden behind a large potted plant. The windows of the 42nd floor offered a spectacular view of Manhattan's skyline, but Callista barely noticed anymore. 5 months had passed since her mother's death, and the world had lost its color. Now everything existed in shades of gray, like an old photograph slowly fading at the edges. Her phone buzzed. Another medical bill collection notice. Callista's hands trembled as she opened the message. $2,173 past due. Her throat tightened. Even with her mother gone, the debts kept piling up, a constant reminder of those final, desperate months when she'd tried everything to save her. "Miss Monroe?" The voice startled her. Patricia Chen, her supervisor, stood at the break room entrance, tablet in hand. "The quarterly reports need to be reformatted. Mr. Ellington's office wants them by 6. "Of course." Callista adjusted her sliding glasses, gathering her barely touched lunch. "I'll do it right away. And please update the Henderson portfolio while you're at it." Callista nodded, already moving toward the door. This was her role. The reliable one, the quiet one, the one who stayed late without complaint. The invisible one. Back at her cubicle, she pulled up the reports and began. Working, numbers were safe. Numbers didn't ask how she was doing or expect her to pretend she was getting better. Numbers didn't give empty condolences or awkward pats on the shoulder. The office buzzed with activity around her, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, colleagues chatting about weekend plans. Callista typed steadily, letting the familiar rhythm of work dull her thoughts. "Did you see him today?" 2 young analysts whispered at the coffee station behind her cubicle. "Thayer Ellington? God, yes, that charcoal suit should be illegal. I heard he closed the Singapore deal, another $1 billion in the bank." As if he needed more. 35, gorgeous, and probably the most eligible bachelor in Manhattan. Callista kept typing, though her fingers had slowed. She'd seen Thayer Ellington exactly twice in the 5 years she'd worked at Orem and Vale. Once at the annual Christmas party, where he'd given a brief speech without a single smile, and once in the elevator, where he'd been too absorbed in his phone to notice anyone else's existence. He was like a storm contained in an expensive suit, powerful, distant, and completely untouchable. Everything about him radiated cold precision, from his steel blue eyes to his perfectly knotted ties. He was the kind of man who shaped the world through sheer force of will, while people like Callista simply tried to survive in it. The afternoon stretched on. One by one, her colleagues packed up and left. Soon the office grew quiet, empty except for the cleaning staff and the eternal hum of the air conditioning. Callista's eyes burned as she finished the last report. 7:43 p.m. Outside her window, rain had started to fall, drawing silvery trails down the glass. She should have left hours ago, but the thought of going home to her empty apartment made her chest ache. Home. It wasn't really home anymore, just a collection of rooms filled with memories she couldn't bear to pack away. Her mother's coffee mug still sat on the kitchen counter. Her favorite throw blanket still draped over the couch. Sometimes Callista swore she could smell her lavender, perfume in the hallway. Thunder rumbled overhead as she finally shut down her computer. The cleaning lady, Rosa, gave her a sympathetic smile as she passed. "Gonna rain hard tonight, honey. You got an umbrella?" Callista shook her head. "I'll be fine, thank you, Rosa." The elevator ride to the lobby was silent. Her reflection in the polished doors looked like a ghost, pale, slight, dressed in clothes that hung too loose on her frame. When had she last bought something new to wear? Before the hospital bills, before the endless doctor's appointments, before everything fell apart. The lobby was deserted. Through the glass doors, she could see the rain had become a downpour. The streets of Manhattan were a blur of headlights and reflections, the sidewalks rivers of urban runoff. Callista stood, just inside the doors, watching the deluge. She should call a cab, but the thought of spending money on anything but bills made her stomach turn. It was only 15 blocks to her apartment. She'd walked in the rain before. Taking a deep breath, she pushed through the doors into the storm. The rain was shocking cold, soaking through her thin blazer in seconds. But she welcomed it. At least the rain gave her an excuse for the wetness on her face. She made it halfway, down the block before the tears really started. Not the quiet, controlled tears she usually allowed herself, but deep, gasping sobs that ripped through her chest. 5 months of grief, of loneliness, of trying to be strong. It all poured out of her there on that random street corner in the rain. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered to the storm. "I'm so sorry I couldn't save you." Lightning flashed, illuminating the street in stark white. And in that flash, standing in the doorway of Orham and Vale, was Thayer Ellington. Callista froze. How long had he been there? Had he seen her break down? Shame burned through her, hotter than any fever. She needed to move, to run, to disappear. But before she could take a single step, he was moving toward her. His expensive suit was getting soaked, his perfectly styled hair dripping in his face. He didn't seem to notice or care. He stopped, directly in front of her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to see his face. His eyes weren't cold anymore. They burned with something she couldn't name, something that made her heart stutter in her chest. "I see you," he said, his voice barely audible over the rain. "I finally see you." And then, before Callista could process what was happening, Thayer Ellington cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. The world stopped spinning. The rain ceased to exist. Everything, every thought, every worry, every scar on her heart, disappeared in the press of his lips against hers. For the first time in 5 months, Callista felt something other than pain. She felt alive. Callista didn't sleep that night. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, her lips still tingling from a kiss that couldn't possibly have been real. The memory played on loop. The rain, the lightning, Thayer Ellington's eyes burning into hers, the taste of storm water and expensive cologne. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Another medical bill notification. Reality crashed back like a bucket of ice water. What was she doing? Floating in some impossible fantasy when her life was held together by maxed-out credit cards and payment plans? Morning came too soon. Callista stood in front of her bathroom mirror, examining herself with critical eyes. Dark circles shadowed her face, and her hair refused to cooperate. She'd spent 20 minutes trying to decide what to wear before settling on her usual. A navy pencil skirt that had seen better days, and a white blouse that was slightly too big. It didn't mean anything, she told her reflection firmly. He probably doesn't even remember it happened. The subway ride to work felt endless. Every man in a suit made her heart jump, though none of them were him. By the time she reached Orham and Vale's gleaming tower, her nerves were frayed to breaking point. The elevator was crowded with Monday morning traffic. Callista pressed herself into the corner, clutching her worn leather bag like a shield. Floor by floor, people filtered out until she was alone, rising toward the 42nd floor. "Hold the elevator." A hand shot between the closing doors. Callista's heart stopped. Thayer Ellington stepped in, his presence immediately filling the small space. He wore a perfectly tailored navy suit today, his tie the color of storm clouds. Their eyes met in the mirrored wall. Neither spoke. The elevator hummed. Callista counted floors, praying for the numbers to move faster. She could feel him watching her, could almost taste the tension crackling between them. Floor 40, 41. "You're avoiding looking at me," he said suddenly. His voice was low, rich with authority and something else. Amusement? Callista's cheeks burned. I don't. Have dinner with me." The elevator dinged. 42. Callista stared at him, her mouth slightly open. "What?" "Tonight. 8 o'clock. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, the same scent that had mingled with rain in their kiss. Unless you're going to tell me you didn't feel it too. The doors opened. Without waiting for her response, he walked out, leaving Callista frozen in place until the doors started to close again. She barely managed to squeeze through them. Her desk felt like sanctuary. She sank into her chair, hands trembling as she booted up her computer. This wasn't happening. Men like Thayer Ellington didn't kiss women like her in the rain. They definitely didn't ask them to dinner. There had to be some kind of mistake. Monroe? She jumped. Patricia Chen stood at her cubicle entrance, frowning. Mr. Ellington's office needs the Richardson files, all of them. Now? Yes, now, and he requested you deliver them personally. Callista's stomach dropped. The Richardson account was massive. At least 4 boxes of documents. It would take multiple trips, which meant multiple opportunities to make a fool of herself. She gathered the first box with shaking hands and headed for the executive floor. Thayer's office took up the corner of the building, all floor-to-ceiling windows and modern furniture. His assistant, a razor-sharp woman named Regina Walsh, barely glanced up as Callista approached. "Go right in," Regina said, continuing to type. "He's expecting you." The office door felt impossibly heavy. Callista pushed it open, clutching the box of files like a lifeline. Thayer stood at the windows, his back to her, phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care what the board thinks. The merger happens on my terms or it doesn't happen at all." He turned, eyes finding her immediately. Something in his expression shifted. "I'll call you back." He set the phone down, moving toward her with that fluid grace that made her pulse race. "The Richardson files?" Callista nodded, not trusting her voice. She set the box on his desk, painfully aware of how close he was standing. "There's more?" 3 more boxes. His lips curved slightly. "Then you'll be making several trips to my office today. Mr. Ellington, Thayer," he corrected. "And before you say what I can see forming on your lips, yes, I know exactly what I'm doing." "Do you?" The words slipped out before she could stop them. "Because I don't understand any of this. Last night, this morning, I'm nobody. Just an assistant who can barely keep her life together. I eat lunch alone and wear old clothes and cry in the rain. Why would you?" "Because you're real." He stepped closer, his eyes intense. "Do you know how rare that is in my world? Everyone wants something from me. Everyone plays a role, wears a mask, but you..." His hand lifted, fingers brushing her cheek. "You're genuine, unguarded, beautiful in a way that has nothing to do with designer labels or social status." Callista's heart thundered in her chest. "I have debts," she whispered, "so many debts, my mother's medical bills." "I know." At her startled look, he explained, "I had Regina pull your file this morning. I know about your mother, about the sacrifices you made, about how you worked overtime for 3 years to pay for her treatments." Tears pricked at Callista's eyes. "Then you know I'm a mess." "No," he said softly. "I know you're extraordinary." The word hung between them, heavy with possibility. Callista looked up at him, really looked at him, and saw something unexpected in his face. Vulnerability. The mighty Thayer Ellington, for all his power and control, was putting himself out there. Risking rejection. Just like her. 8 o'clock? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. His smile transformed his entire face. "I'll send a car. Wear something that makes you feel beautiful, not because you need to impress me, but because you deserve to feel that way." Callista nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her at the door. "And Callista?" She looked back. "Bring those other boxes up one at a time. I want to see you walk through that door 3 more times today." For the first time in 5 months, Callista felt her lips curve into a real smile. "Yes, sir." "Thayer," he corrected again, his eyes dancing. "We're well past sir after that kiss in the rain, don't you think?" Heat flooded her cheeks as she hurried out. Regina gave her a knowing look as she passed, but Callista barely noticed. Her mind was already racing ahead to tonight, to dinner, to possibilities she'd never allowed herself to imagine. And somewhere, in the back of her mind, she could have sworn she heard her mother's voice. "It's okay to be happy again, sweetheart. It's okay to live." Maybe, just maybe, it was time to try. Callista stood in front of her closet, heart racing as the clock ticked toward 8. She'd forgotten how many clothes she actually owned. Pieces from before, when life had been different, when she'd been different. Her hands trembled as they brushed past the burgundy dress she'd bought for her mother's birthday 2 years ago. It still had the price tag attached. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Car will arrive in 30 minutes. T." The simple message sent butterflies through her stomach. This was real. This was happening. Taking a deep breath, Callista pulled out the burgundy dress. The fabric felt like liquid silk against her skin as she slipped it on. It hugged her. Curves. Curves she'd forgotten she had under months of shapeless clothes. The woman in the mirror looked like a stranger. Elegant, almost graceful, with her dark hair falling in soft waves around her shoulders. She kept her glasses. They were part of who she was, and Thayer's words echoed in her mind. "You're real." Tonight she wouldn't hide. Not from him, not from herself. The doorbell rang exactly on time. The driver was professional and discreet, opening the car door without comment. As they glided through Manhattan's glittering streets, Callista's phone buzzed again. "Looking forward to seeing you. E.T." 4 simple words that made her heart skip. When was the last time anyone had looked forward to seeing her? The car pulled up to Le Ciel, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. Callista's stomach tightened. She didn't belong here, among the affluent and powerful. She should turn back, text him some excuse. "Welcome, Miss Monroe." The maitre d' appeared at her side, as if materializing from thin air. "Mr. Ellington is waiting for you. Please follow me." The restaurant was a symphony of soft lighting and quiet elegance. Conversations hummed at intimate tables, champagne glasses clinked, and somewhere a piano played softly. And there, at a corner table overlooking the city lights, was Thayer. He stood as she approached, and for a moment neither spoke. His eyes traveled over her, taking in every detail, lingering on the way the burgundy fabric caught the light. "You're breathtaking," he said finally, his voice rough with something that made her shiver. "I kept the glasses," she replied, unsure why those were the first words out of her mouth. His lips curved. "I'm glad. They're part of what makes you, you." He pulled out her chair, and as she sat, his fingers brushed her bare shoulder. The touch was brief, probably accidental, but it sent electricity down her spine. "Wine?" he asked, signaling the sommelier. Yes, please." She needed something to steady her nerves. The sommelier appeared with a bottle of red that probably cost more than her monthly rent. As he poured, Thayer watched her, his expression unreadable. "You're nervous," he observed once they were alone. "Terrified," she admitted, surprising herself with her honesty. "I keep waiting to wake up." "Why?" "Because this doesn't happen to people like me. Powerful CEOs don't kiss their assistants in the rain. They don't send cars or make reservations at places like this. They don't—" She gestured between them. "Want this." "And what is this exactly?" He leaned forward, his eyes intent on hers. "What do you think I want, Callista?" The way he said her name made her breath catch. "I don't know. That's what scares me." "Then let me be clear." He reached across the table, taking her hand. His thumb traced circles on her palm, sending shivers up her arm. "I want to know you. Not the quiet girl who hides in the break room, but the woman who worked herself to exhaustion for 3 years to save her mother. The woman who feels everything so deeply she breaks down in the rain but shows up to work the next day anyway. The woman who makes me feel more alive than I have in years." Tears pricked at Callista's eyes. "I'm not special," she whispered. "You are to me." His grip tightened. "And I think I am to you too. Am I wrong?" The waiter approached with menus, forcing them to separate. Callista used the moment to collect herself, to breathe through the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. As they ordered, she noticed little things about Thayer she'd never seen before. The way one corner of his mouth lifted slightly higher when he smiled. The tiny scar above his right eyebrow. The way his confidence seemed to slip, just slightly, when he looked at her too long. "Tell me about your mother," he said after their appetizers arrived. Callista stiffened. "It's not exactly first date conversation." "I want to know, please." Something in his voice made her look up. There was no pity in his eyes, no awkward sympathy, just genuine interest. "She was everything," Callista began slowly. "After Dad left when I was 6, it was just us. She worked 3 jobs to put me through college. Never complained, never made me feel like a burden. She loved gardenias and old movies and dancing in the kitchen while she cooked. When she got sick," her voice cracked, "I thought if I just worked hard enough, made enough money, found the right doctors, but sometimes love isn't enough, is it?" "No," Thayer said softly. "Sometimes it isn't. But that doesn't make it worth any less." She looked at him sharply. "You sound like you know." Something dark flickered across his face. "My brother. 10 years ago. Cancer doesn't care how much money or power you have. It takes what it wants." Understanding passed between them, deep and profound. They were both members of a club no one wants to join. Those left behind. Those who couldn't save the ones they loved. "Is that why you kissed me?" she asked suddenly. "Because you recognized the grief?" "No." He reached for her hand again. "I kissed you because in that moment, watching you stand in the rain, so broken but still standing, you made me feel human again. Do you know how long it's been since anyone's done that?" The rest of dinner passed in a blur of excellent food and deeper conversations. Thayer told her about growing up with the weight of family expectations, about building Orem and Vale into an empire, about the loneliness at the top. Callista shared stories about her mother, about her dreams of writing that she'd put aside, about the small joys she was slowly learning to feel again. When dessert arrived, a delicate chocolate soufflé, Thayer watched her take the first bite with an intensity that made her blush. "What?" she asked, self-conscious. "You don't hide when you enjoy something," he said. "Your whole face lights up. It's captivating. Most people would say I'm too emotional. Most people are idiots." He leaned closer. "Your emotions make you real. They make you honest. In my world, that's rarer than any diamond." After dinner, he insisted on driving her home himself, dismissing the waiting car. His Aston Martin purred through the night streets, and Callista found herself stealing glances at his profile, still not quite believing this was real. At her building, he walked her to her door. The hallway was quiet, the air heavy with possibility. "Thank you," she said softly. "For dinner, for everything." "Callista." His voice was rough. "Look at me." She did. His eyes were dark, intense, fixed on her lips. "I'm going to kiss you again," he said. "Not because you're sad this time, not because it's raining, but because I haven't thought about anything else since the last time I did." When his lips met hers, it was different from their first kiss. That had been desperation, emotion, storm. This was slower, deeper, a promise of things to come. His hands cupped her face, thumbs stroking her cheeks as he tasted her, learned her. When they finally parted, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "Have dinner with me again tomorrow," he whispered. "People will talk." "Let them." He kissed her again briefly. "I don't care what anyone thinks. I just want you." And there, In a dimly lit hallway in Manhattan, Callista Rose Monroe felt something she thought she'd lost forever. Hope. The whispers started on Tuesday morning. Callista felt them like tiny paper cuts as she walked through the office. The sudden silences, the pointed looks, the huddles of conversation that dissolved as she passed. Did you see her coming out of his office yesterday? I heard his car was parked outside her building. She's not even that pretty. Must be something else. Her desk felt like an island in a sea of speculation. Even Patricia Chen looked at her differently now, her usual brisk demeanor tinged with something that might have been curiosity or disapproval. Callista's computer pinged with a new email. From tellingtonormvale.com. Subject: lunch? Message: my office. 1 p.m. Don't bring a salad. I ordered Italian. Type yes. You're wearing blue today. It matches your smile. Heat crept up her neck. She hadn't even seen him this morning, but he'd noticed her. The navy dress had been another rescue from the back of her closet, another piece of her old self emerging from hibernation. Miss Monroe? Regina Walsh stood at her cubicle entrance, perfectly coiffed and professionally distant. Mr. Ellington needs the quarterly projections before lunch. The message was clear in Regina's tone. Whatever was happening between Callista and Thayer, work still came first. I'll have them ready in an hour, Callista promised, diving into her spreadsheets with renewed focus. At 12:57, she gathered her courage and headed for the executive floor. The whispers followed her to the elevator. She kept her chin up, remembering Thayer's words, "I don't care what anyone thinks." Regina's desk was empty, probably at lunch herself. Callista knocked softly on Thayer's door. "Come in." He was on the phone when she entered, but his eyes lit up at the sight of her. He gestured for her to sit while he finished his call. "No, tell the board I won't compromise on this. The Dubai project needs complete restructuring." He paused, listening. "Then they can find another CEO who'll triple their profits in 5 years. Until then, it's my way." He hung up, his professional mask melting into a warmer expression. "Hi." "Hi," she replied, suddenly shy. "I brought the projections." Always efficient. He stood, moving around his desk to pull her up from her chair. "But right now I don't care about projections." His kiss was soft, almost reverent. When he pulled back, his thumbs traced her cheekbones. "I missed you." "It's been less than 24 hours, she reminded him, even as her heart raced. "Too long." He led her to the small conference table where lunch was laid out. Elegant containers of pasta, fresh bread, and what looked like tiramisu. "You need to eat more than those sad salads." They settled into their seats, and Callista tried to ignore how domestic it felt, sharing lunch in his office like this was normal, like she belonged here. "They're talking about us," she said finally, twirling pasta on her fork. "I know." He watched her carefully. "Does it bother you?" "Shouldn't it bother you? I'm just an assistant. People will think that I'm dating an intelligent, beautiful woman who happens to work for my company." He reached across the table, taking her, and let them think whatever they want. "I've spent my entire life living up to other people's expectations. Not anymore. But your reputation is exactly that, mine. And I choose to spend it on something real." His grip tightened. "Unless you're having second thoughts." The vulnerability in his voice made her chest ache. "No," she said, softly. "I'm not. I'm just scared." "Of what?" "Of everything. Of feeling too much. Of not being enough. Of losing." She swallowed hard. "The last person I loved died in my arms, Thayer. I'm not sure I know how to do this anymore." He was silent for a long moment, his thumb tracing patterns on her palm. "After my brother died," he said finally, "I threw myself into work. Built walls so high nothing could touch me. It was easier than feeling, safer than caring. But then, I saw you in the rain and those walls." He shook his head. You didn't even have to try. You just existed and they crumbled. What are we doing? She whispered. Living, he said simply. Finally living. A knock at the door made them jump apart. Regina entered without waiting for a response. Mr. Ellington, the Beijing investors, are online too. And Miss Monroe, Mrs. Chen, is looking for you. The real world crashed back in. Callista stood quickly, gathering her things. I should go. Dinner tonight? Thayer asked, already reaching for his phone. I can't, There's a payment due for one of Mom's old bills. I need to go to the billing office before they close. Something flickered in his eyes. Let me help. No. It came out sharper than she intended. Please, I need to handle this myself. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Tomorrow, then. No arguments. Back at her desk, Callista tried to focus on work, but her mind kept drifting. To lunch, to Thayer, to the stack of bills waiting at home, to the whispers that followed her every move. At 5, she packed up quickly, hoping to avoid the usual crowd at the elevators. But as she waited, a group of analysts from the trading floor joined her. I heard he bought her dinner at Le Ciel. Please, girls like that know exactly what they're doing. Wonder how long until she gets promoted. The elevator arrived, but Callista's feet wouldn't move. She couldn't bear the thought of being trapped in that small space with their judgment and assumptions. Excuse me. A familiar voice cut through the gossip. Miss Monroe, Mr. Ellington asked me to deliver this to you. Regina appeared at her side, holding out a small envelope. The analysts fell silent, watching. Inside was a simple note. For when you're ready to let someone else be strong for a while. Beneath it was a check, the exact amount of her mother's remaining medical bills. Tears blurred Callista's vision. She looked up to find Regina watching her with unexpected kindness. The private elevator is this way, Regina said quietly. Mr. Ellington said you might prefer it today. As the executive elevator carried her, down in solitary peace, Callista stared at the check in her hands. Part of her wanted to tear it up, to prove she could handle everything alone. But another part, the part that was slowly learning to live again, heard Thayer's words. Finally living. Maybe that meant learning to accept help too. Her phone buzzed with a text. The walls aren't just yours to carry anymore. And, for the first time in a very long time, Callista let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to be strong alone anymore. The check sat untouched on Callista's kitchen counter all night, its presence heavier than its paper weight should allow. She'd made 3 cups of tea, reorganized her bookshelf, and cleaned the entire apartment. Anything to avoid looking at it. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. Pride is expensive, sweetheart. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is accept help. At midnight, her phone lit up with a text. Can't sleep, thinking of you. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. There were so many things she wanted to say, needed to say. Instead, she typed, Come over? The response was immediate. On my way. 20 minutes later, a soft knock at her door made her heart race. She opened it to find Thayer in casual clothes, dark jeans and a gray cashmere sweater that made him look younger, more vulnerable somehow. Hi, she said softly. He didn't reply. Instead, he stepped forward, cupped her face in his hands, and kissed her with an intensity that made her knees weak. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. You've been crying, he observed, thumbs brushing her cheeks. The check was too much. No, she pulled back to look at him properly. Yes, I don't know. Can we talk? He followed her to the small living room, taking in the modest apartment with curious eyes. His gaze lingered on the photos of her mother, the well-worn furniture, the small touches that made it home. It's not much, Callista said, suddenly self-conscious. It's perfect. He sat on the couch, pulling her down beside him. It's you. They sat in silence for a moment, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting against him. The late night city hummed outside her windows. "I want to tell you something," Thayer said finally. "About my brother." Callista shifted to look at him. His profile was sharp against the dim light, jaw tight with memory. "When he got sick, I threw money at the problem. Best doctors, experimental treatments, private nurses. I thought if I just spent enough, worked hard enough, I could fix it, save him." His laugh was bitter. "You know what his last words to me were?" She shook her head. "Stop trying to buy more time, Thay. Start trying to live the time you have." He turned to her, eyes intense. "I didn't understand then. But watching you these past months, seeing how you worked yourself to exhaustion for your mother, carrying those bills like a cross, I recognized myself. The guilt, the need to fix everything alone." "It's not the same," she whispered. "Isn't it? We're both trying to pay debts that can't be settled with money. Both punishing ourselves for things beyond our control." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I promised her I'd take care of everything. And you have. God, Callista, you've carried this weight for so long." He wiped her tears with gentle fingers. "Let me help. Not because you need it, but because I need to give it. Because watching you struggle hurts me as much as it hurts you." She pulled away slightly, needing space to think. "People at work already think I'm sleeping with you for money. People at work can go to hell." His voice was sharp. "I don't care what they think, I care about you." "Why?" The question burst out before she could stop it. "Why me? You could have anyone." "Because you see me," he said simply. "Not the CEO, not the bank account, not the reputation. You see me, and you let me see you. All of you, broken pieces and all." He reached for her hand, entwining their fingers. "When was the last time you did something just because you wanted to, not because of bills or obligations or what people might think?" Callista thought about it. I don't remember." "Then let's start now." He stood, pulling her up with him. "Dance with me." "What? There's no music." He pulled out his phone, and soft jazz filled the apartment. Then he drew her close, one hand on her waist, the other still holding hers. "My mother loved this song," she whispered as they swayed. "She used to dance in the kitchen while making dinner." "Tell me about her," he murmured against her hair. "Tell me everything." So she did. As they danced in her small living room at 1 a.m, Callista told him about her mother's laugh, her terrible jokes, her collection of romance novels, about how she'd sing off-key while doing laundry, about her last good day when they'd sat in the hospital garden and planned a trip to Paris they both knew would never happen. And Thayer listened. He held her closer when her voice broke, laughed at the funny stories, and didn't try to fix anything. He just witnessed. "The check," she said finally as the music faded. "I can't take it." "I know." He kissed her forehead. "But let me help another way. Let me set up a payment plan through the company's healthcare foundation. Anonymous, no one would know." She pulled back to look at him. "You'd do that?" "I'd do anything for you." The raw honesty in his voice made her shiver. "Just let me in, Callista. Let me share the weight." Instead of answering, she kissed him. It was different from their previous kisses, deeper, needier. His hands tightened on her waist as she pressed closer. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were dark with desire. But there was something else there too. Tenderness, understanding. "Stay," she whispered. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "Not for, just to sleep. I don't want to be alone tonight." His smile was soft. "Neither do I." Later, lying in her bed with his arms around her, Callista listened to his steady breathing. He'd fallen asleep quickly, his face relaxed in a way she never saw at the office. One of his hands rested protectively over her heart. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, another bill notification. But for the first time in months, it didn't feel like a weight around her neck, because maybe her mother had been right. Maybe sometimes the bravest thing wasn't carrying everything alone. Maybe sometimes the bravest thing was letting someone help you carry it. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m., but Callista arrived at the office by 7. She needed everything to be perfect. The presentations, the financial reports, the coffee service. Anything to prove she deserved her position on merit alone. The past week had been a delicate dance. During the day, she maintained strict professionalism, even as the office whispers grew louder. At night, she fell asleep in Thayer's arms, sharing pieces of herself she thought she'd lost forever. "You're here early." Callista jumped at Regina's voice. The executive assistant stood in the doorway of the conference room, impeccable as always. "Just double-checking everything for the board meeting." Regina's expression softened slightly. "They're going to be brutal today. The Crawford merger is controversial, and some board members think Mr. Ellington is distracted." The implication was clear. Callista's hands trembled as she straightened an already perfect stack of papers. "He knows what he's doing," she said quietly. "Yes," Regina agreed, surprising her. "He does. And so do you." She paused. "The way he looks at you? I've worked for him for 8 years. I've never seen him like this." Before Callista could respond, voices echoed from the hallway. Board members were arriving early. The next hour was a blur of handshakes and forced smiles. Callista kept to the background, efficiently managing the coffee service and document distribution. But she felt their eyes on her, calculating and cold. Thayer arrived last, commanding the room with his presence. He wore his power-like armor, charcoal suit, steel blue tie, expression unreadable. But when his eyes met hers briefly, she saw everything he couldn't say. "Let's begin," he said, taking his seat at the head of the table. "The Crawford merger." "Before we discuss Crawford," Richard Blackwood, the senior board member, interrupted, "there are some concerns about recent developments within the company." Thayer's jaw tightened. "Meaning?" "Meaning relationships between executives and subordinates create liability issues." Blackwood's cold eyes fixed on Callista. "Particularly when those relationships coincide with unauthorized financial arrangements." The room went silent. Callista's heart stopped. "If you're referring to the Healthcare Foundation's payment plans," Thayer's voice was dangerously calm, "those fall under my direct authority as CEO. And your personal interest in the recipient is none of your damn business." Thayer stood, his control cracking. "My personal life is not up for discussion. The Crawford merger. Your personal life affects this company's reputation." Another board member cut in. "The rumors are spreading beyond the office. Investors are asking questions." "Then let them ask." Thayer's hands pressed flat against the table. "I've tripled this company's value in 5 years. I've closed deals you said were impossible. I've earned the right to risk everything for an office romance." The words hit Callista like physical blows. She moved without thinking, gathering her papers with trembling hands. "Miss Monroe," Regina called, but Callista was already walking out, head high despite the tears threatening to fall. She made it to the empty break room before breaking down. The coffee pot shook in her hands as she tried to make a fresh batch, something normal, something routine to ground herself. "Callista." Thayer stood in the doorway, his face a mask of controlled fury and concern. "Don't," she whispered. "Please. Just don't." He crossed the room in 3 strides, taking the coffee pot from her shaking hands and setting it aside. "Look at me." "I can't." The tears came faster. "I'm ruining everything. Your reputation, the company's image." "Stop." His hands cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You are not ruining anything. They are, with their narrow minds and their outdated prejudices. They're right about the liability. They're right about nothing." His voice cracked with emotion. "Do you know what I realized last night watching you sleep? I realized I haven't felt alone since that first kiss in the rain. Do you know how goddamn miraculous that is?" A sob escaped her. "Thayer. No, listen to me. His thumbs brushed away her tears. Before you, I was existing. Just going through motions, building empires because I didn't know how to build connections. And then you happened, with your quiet strength and your broken heart, and your ability to make me feel human again. The board can either accept us or find themselves a new CEO. His eyes blazed. I'm not losing you over their antiquated policies. The break room door opened. Regina stood there, her usual composure slightly ruffled. Mr. Ellington, the board is waiting, and... She hesitated. They're calling for a vote of no confidence. Thayer's hands tightened on Callista's face. Then, let them vote. No. Callista pulled away, straightening her spine. You can't throw away everything you've built, not for me. Watch me. Please, she whispered. I lost my mother. I can't be the reason you lose your life's work, too. Something in his expression shattered. You think that's what matters to me? Stock prices? Merger deals? None of it means anything compared to... Mr. Ellington, Regina interrupted urgently. They're calling the shareholders. Callista made the decision in that moment. For both of them. I quit. The words hung in the air like shattered glass. No. Thayer reached for her, but she stepped back. Effective immediately. I'll have my resignation letter on your desk in an hour. Her voice shook but held. The company needs you, the employees need you. You've built something incredible here, something that helps people, like the healthcare foundation that's helping me. You can't throw that away. Callista, don't... I love you. The words tumbled out, surprising them both. I love you enough to walk away. Before he could respond, she turned and fled, past Regina's sympathetic gaze, past the curious onlookers in the hallway, past the security desk and out into the morning sunshine. She made it 3 blocks before collapsing onto a bench, her whole body shaking. Her phone buzzed repeatedly. Thayer probably, or Regina. She couldn't look. A text finally broke through. This isn't over. Meet me tonight. Our spot in the rain. Please. T. Callista stared at the message through her tears. She knew she should ignore it, should make a clean break, should let him go back to his world of power and success while she what? Went back to being invisible? Went back to existing instead of living. Another text. You say you love me enough to walk away. I love you enough to fight. Tonight. 8 p.m. Don't make me chase you through every street in Manhattan. T. Despite everything, a small smile curved her lips, because that was the thing about Thayer Ellington. When he wanted something, really wanted it, he didn't let anything stand in his way. Not even her own attempts at noble sacrifice. Her fingers moved across the screen. 8 p.m. Because maybe, just maybe, some things were worth fighting for. Even if it meant fighting your own fears. Even if it meant fighting the whole world. Manhattan at night was a galaxy of lights, but Callista barely noticed them as she walked the familiar path, to Orem and Vale. The weather seemed to understand the gravity of the moment. Dark clouds gathered overhead, threatening rain. Just like that first night. She'd spent the day in a daze, alternating between crying and staring at her phone, reading news alerts about Orem and Vale. The headlines were brutal. Ellington Empire faces board revolt. Orem and Vale stocks drop. Amid CEO scandal. Crawford merger in jeopardy as leadership crisis looms. 7:55 p.m. Her heels clicked against the wet pavement as she approached their spot, the place where everything had changed, where a kiss in the rain had awakened something she thought was dead forever. He was already there. Thayer stood beneath the building's awning, but not in his usual suit. He wore dark jeans and a black sweater, the same outfit from their night together. His hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. When he saw her, his whole body tensed like a man preparing to either fight or fall. You came, he said softly. You knew I would. Did I? He stepped closer, into the light drizzle that had started to fall. You left me today, Callista. You quit your job and walked away without letting me fight for us. I was trying to protect you. I don't need protection. His voice cracked with emotion. I need you. Thunder rumbled overhead. The drizzle turned to proper rain, but neither of them moved to take shelter. The board called an emergency session. After you left, he continued. They gave me an ultimatum. End things with you or face a vote of no confidence. Callista's heart clenched. What did you do? What do you think I did? He closed the distance between them, cupping her face in his hands. I told them to go to hell. Thayer, no. Yes. His thumbs brushed her cheeks, wiping away rain or tears or both. I told them that if they wanted to fire me for falling in love with the most extraordinary woman I've ever met, they were welcome to try. And then I told them something else. She held her breath. What? I told them about David, my brother, about how watching him die made me realize that success means nothing if you're not really living. And then I told them about you, about how you worked yourself to exhaustion for years to take care of your mother, about how you show up every day carrying so much weight but still find ways to be kind, to be real. What does that have to do with everything? His eyes blazed in the rain. Because when I finished talking, Regina stood up. She told them about how the Healthcare Foundation has helped hundreds of employees since I started it, how morale has improved since I stopped being just a CEO and started being human again, and she said it was all because of you. Callista's knees felt weak. What happened? Other people started speaking up. Lauren from HR, Michael from accounting, people whose lives have been touched by the foundation, people who've noticed the changes in the company culture. And then Richard Blackwood's own daughter stood up, the board member who tried to force me to choose. Thayer's lips curved slightly. His daughter works in marketing. Apparently she's been getting help from the foundation for her son's medical treatments. Treatments she couldn't afford even with her father's money, because he believes asking for help is a sign of weakness. The rain was falling harder now, soaking through their clothes, but neither noticed. The vote failed, he said softly. Not because of my threats or my business record, but because of you. Because you showed everyone that it's okay to be human, to need help, to love. A sob escaped her. The Crawford merger is proceeding. Actually, Crawford called personally to say he respects a man who chooses love over power. Thayer's smile was wry. Apparently, he met his wife when she was a waitress at his father's country club. His family tried to stop the marriage. He chose her. They've been together 30 years. But your reputation... My reputation? He laughed, the sound full of joy and relief. My reputation was that of a cold, ruthless CEO who cared about nothing but profit. Now people see me as human, as someone who understands struggle and love and choosing what matters. My stock might have dropped, but my humanity, that's worth more. I'm scared, she whispered. Of what? Of everything. Of not being enough. Of you regretting this, He silenced her with a kiss. It was like their first kiss in the rain, but different, deeper, surer, a promise rather than a revelation. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I have a confession to make. What? I bought a ticket to Paris last night. She pulled back slightly. What? Your mother's dream trip. The one she never got to take. His eyes were soft. I thought maybe we could take it for her. And for us. A fresh start. Tears mixed with rain on her cheeks. But your job. We'll be here when we get back. The board agreed to a month's leave. And when we return... He took a deep breath. When we return, I want to restructure the Healthcare Foundation, make it bigger, better, help more people, and I want you to run it. Me? You understand what it means to need help, to be strong and vulnerable at the same time. You can make it something extraordinary. He brushed wet hair from her face. Say yes. To Paris or the Foundation? To both. To everything. To us. His voice dropped to a whisper. To forever. If you want it. The rain poured around them, but Callista felt nothing but warmth. Because this was what it meant to really live, to take chances, to trust love, to believe in possibilities. Yes, she whispered. To Paris, to the foundation, to us, to everything. His smile was brighter than all of Manhattan's lights combined. He lifted her off her feet, spinning her in the rain as she laughed. Really laughed. For the first time in so long. When he set her down, his eyes were serious again. I love you, Callista Rose Monroe. Not despite your broken pieces, but because of them. Because they make you real. They make you mine. I love you too, she said softly. Not despite your power, but because of how you choose to use it. To help. To heal. To love. They kissed again in the rain, but this time it wasn't about grief, or desperation, or even passion. It was about promise, about future, about choosing love over fear, humanity over power, reality over appearance. And somewhere Callista thought she could hear her mother's laugh, could feel her approval, could sense her joy. Because sometimes the bravest thing isn't walking away. Sometimes the bravest thing is staying, fighting, believing, living. Callista stood in her apartment surrounded by open boxes and scattered memories. 1 week until Paris. 1 week until everything changed. Her mother's old suitcase lay open on the bed, already half-packed with carefully chosen clothes, including the burgundy dress from her first date with Thayer. Your mother would have loved this, a voice said from the doorway. Callista turned to find Regina standing there, a stack of papers in her hands. Over the past week, the executive assistant had become an unexpected ally and friend. She always wanted to see Paris, Callista said softly, running her fingers over her mother's worn travel guide. She used to practice French while doing the dishes, mostly cursing when she broke something. Regina smiled, setting the papers on Callista's small dining table. These are the last documents you need to sign, for the Healthcare Foundation. Once you're back, it's all yours to run. The reality of it still felt surreal. Not just Paris, but everything. The foundation, the future, the way her life had transformed in the span of a few rain-soaked kisses. I don't know if I'm ready, Callista admitted, sitting down to review the papers. That's exactly why you're perfect for it. Regina's usually sharp voice softened. You understand what it means to need help, to be afraid to ask for it, to feel unworthy of receiving it. A knock at the door interrupted them. Thayer stepped in, his presence filling the small apartment as it always did. But he was different now, softer around the edges, his usual corporate armor replaced by casual clothes and relaxed shoulders. Ladies, he nodded to Regina, but his eyes were fixed on Callista. They always were these days. I'll leave you to it. Regina gathered her things. At the door, she paused. You know, when my sister got sick last year, the foundation paid for her treatments. I never told anyone, but thank you, Mr. Ellington. And Callista, you're going to be amazing at this. After she left, Thayer moved to wrap his arms around Callista from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder to look at the papers. Having second thoughts? He asked quietly. No. Just processing. She leaned back against him. Everything's happening so fast. We can postpone Paris. Don't you dare. She turned in his arms to face him. Mom waited too long for her dreams. I don't want to make the same mistake. His eyes softened as they always did when she mentioned her mother. Tell me more about her. What would she have done first in Paris? The Louvre. Callista smiled at the memory. She had this whole plan. She'd spend a whole day there, then find a little cafe and write about everything she saw. She paused. She wanted to be a writer, you know, before life got in the way. Like mother, like daughter. At her surprised look, he continued. Regina told me about the stories she found in your desk drawer. The ones you write during lunch breaks. Callista blushed. They're nothing, just ways to process everything. They're beautiful. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Like you. You read them? Regina might have leaked a few. His smile was gentle. You have a gift, Callista. The foundation isn't the only dream you should pursue. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. Another text from the moving company. Thayer had insisted on having her things moved to his penthouse while they were in Paris. It's not too late to change your mind, she said softly. About any of this. The foundation, living together, Paris. Stop. He cupped her face in his hands. Do you know what I did this morning? She shook her head. I went to visit David's grave. First time in years. His voice roughened. I told him about you. About how you made me remember what it means to really live. About how falling in love with you made me a better CEO. A better man. He pressed his forehead to hers. No more second thoughts. No more doubts. You're it for me. Callista Rose Monroe. Tears pricked at her eyes. I went to Mom's grave too. Yesterday. I told her about Paris. About how we're going to see everything she dreamed of seeing. She swallowed hard. I think she sent you to me. That night in the rain. Maybe she did. He kissed her softly. Maybe David helped. They probably got tired of watching us exist instead of live. A comfortable silence fell as they stood there holding each other in the apartment that had seen so much of Callista's grief. But now, surrounded by moving boxes and travel guides and foundation documents, it felt like a cocoon about to break open. I have something for you, Thayer said finally, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small, worn notebook. What's this? Open it. Inside, in faded ink, were handwritten notes about Paris. Restaurant recommendations, hidden gardens, secret viewpoints. In the margins were little sketches. The Eiffel Tower, Notre Dame, random street scenes. David's travel journal, Thayer explained quietly. From his last trip before he got sick. I thought maybe we could visit some of his favorite places. Mix his memories with your mother's dreams. Callista traced the delicate drawings with trembling fingers. It's perfect. There's something else. He turned to the last page. A new entry in his handwriting. Dear David, I finally understand what you meant about living the time you have. Because every moment with her feels more alive than all the years before. Thank you for teaching me that. We'll see Paris for you, little brother, and for her mother, and for us. Love always, Thay. The tears fell freely now. I love you, she whispered. He wiped her tears with gentle thumbs. Enough to let me help you pack? Because, sweetheart, that suitcase looks like organized chaos. She laughed through her tears, smacking his chest playfully. My chaos is perfectly organized. Thank you very much. Like you. He kissed her forehead. Beautiful chaos that somehow makes perfect sense. They spent the rest of the evening packing together, mixing their stories like they were mixing their lives. Thayer told her about David's adventures in Paris, while she shared her mother's dream itinerary. Each item they packed was a promise, of memories to make, of dreams to fulfill, of a future to build together. Later, lying in bed with his arms around her, Callista whispered, what if we added some dreams of our own, to mix with Mom's and David's? Like what? Like, maybe we could write a book together, about the foundation, about second chances, about choosing love over fear. He was quiet for so long she thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, only if you write it, I'll just be the charming CEO who was smart enough to fall in love with the writer. Deal. She snuggled closer. 1 week, until Paris. 1 week until forever, he corrected softly. And in the quiet of her soon-to-be former apartment, surrounded by boxes and memories and plans, Callista felt something she hadn't felt in years. Perfectly, completely, wonderfully alive. Paris glowed golden in the early morning light, as Callista stood at the balcony of their hotel suite, wrapped in a plush robe. Below, the city was waking up, cafes setting out chairs, delivery trucks rumbling down cobblestone streets, the distant bells of Notre Dame calling the faithful to prayer. 3 days into their trip, and everything still felt like a dream. She touched the delicate gold chain around her neck, a gift from Thayer, their first night here. Hanging from it was her mother's wedding ring and a small key. "For our future," he'd said, pressing the key into her palm. "I want you to have a piece of home while we're making new memories." The sound of the shower shutting off drew her attention back inside. Thayer emerged, hair damp, looking younger and more relaxed than she'd ever seen him in New York. "Already planning today's adventure?" he asked, coming to wrap his arms around her from behind. She held up David's journal and her mother's old Paris guidebook. "I thought we could do both today. David's favorite cafe in the Marais for breakfast, then Mom's dream tour of the Louvre." His arms tightened slightly. "Perfect." The cafe was exactly as David had described it in his journal. Tiny, with mismatched chairs and the best pain au chocolat in Paris. They sat at his favorite table by the window, Callista studying his sketches of the street scene while Thayer watched her with soft eyes. "He would have loved you," Thayer said suddenly. "David, I mean. He was always telling me I needed someone real in my life, someone who could make me laugh. Like when I spilled coffee all over your white shirt yesterday? Exactly like that." He caught her hand across the table. "Though I think he would have laughed harder at how I didn't even care about the shirt. The old me would have had a meltdown over a ruined Thomas Pink. And now I just care that you were horrified enough to try cleaning it with your scarf, which only made it worse, which made you laugh so hard you snorted coffee through your nose." His eyes crinkled. It was adorable. An elderly French woman at the next table smiled at them. "L'amour," she said approvingly. "C'est magique." Later, standing before the Louvre's glass pyramid, Callista felt tears prick her eyes. She pulled out her mother's guidebook, opening to a page worn from frequent reading. "Start with the Mona. Lisa," she read aloud. "Not because it's the most beautiful, but because everyone should see that smile at least once." She looked up at Thayer. She used to practice that smile in the mirror, said any woman with that many secrets had to be onto something. "Your mom sounds like she was quite the character." She was. Callista traced the words on the page. "Last night, I dreamed about her. She was here, walking these halls, touching the walls like she could absorb centuries of stories through her fingertips." She swallowed hard. She was happy, Thay. Really happy. He pulled her close, kissing her temple. "Then let's make her proud. Touch every wall. Absorb every story. Live enough for both of you." They spent hours wandering the galleries, following her mother's carefully planned route. At each stop, Callista read from the guidebook while Thayer added historical facts he'd researched just for her. They lingered longest in the French Romantics gallery where her mother had written, "True love should look like this, all passion and light and impossible dreams coming true." She was right, Thayer murmured, holding Callista from behind as they gazed at the paintings, about impossible dreams. That evening, they found a tiny restaurant on a side street, the kind her mother had dreamed of discovering. Over candlelight and wine, Thayer pulled out his phone. "Regina sent an update about the foundation," he said, showing her the screen. 3 new families approved for assistance today. One of them, the daughter wrote you a letter." Callista read the email, tears blurring her vision. The girl's mother needed the same treatment hers had, the one they couldn't afford in time. "We can help them," she whispered. "We can make sure they don't have to choose between paying rent and saving their mom." "You're already changing lives," Thayer said softly. "And when we get back, I want to do more." She straightened, wiping her eyes. "Not just medical bills, education funds for kids who lost parents, grief counseling, support groups, everything I wished we'd had. Whatever you want." He reached across the table, taking her hand. The foundation is yours to shape. Later that night, they walked along the Seine, the city lights dancing on the water. Street musicians played somewhere nearby, their music carrying on the evening breeze. "Dance with me," Thayer said suddenly, pulling her into his arms. "Here, in the street?" "Why not? Your mom danced in the kitchen. David drew in cafes. They knew how to live in the moment." He twirled her gently. "Let's live, Callista, really live." So they danced, there on the banks of the Seine, while tourists took photos and locals smiled indulgently. Callista rested her head on Thayer's chest, listening to his heartbeat mix with the music. "I have something to tell you," she said finally. "I started writing again. Really writing." She pulled back to look at him. "A story about us, about love and loss and finding life again. About a CEO who kisses crying girls in the rain and changes their world." His eyes softened. "Changed my world too. I want to publish it," she continued. "Use the proceeds for the foundation. Show people that it's okay to need help, to fall apart, to find love in unexpected places." Instead of answering, he kissed her, deep and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, both breathless, he pressed his forehead to hers. "Know what I was thinking about today?" he asked. "Watching you in the Louvre, touching the walls like your mom would have." "What?" "That I want to marry you." He felt her freeze in his arms. "Not right now, not here, but soon. Because I want everything with you, Callista. The foundation, the book, the dancing in streets. All of it." She pulled back to look at him, tears shining in her eyes. "You mean that?" "More than I've ever meant anything." He brushed away a tear with his thumb. "So what do you say? Want to make some impossible dreams come true?" Above them, the stars twinkled over Paris. Behind them, the musicians started a new song, and in front of them stretched a future neither had dared to imagine before that rainy night in Manhattan. "Yes," she whispered. "To everything. To all of it. To us." He kissed her again, there under the Paris sky, while her mother's ring hung, warm against her heart, and David's journal waited in her bag, ready for more adventures. Because sometimes the best dreams aren't the ones you plan. Sometimes they're the ones that find you when you're brave enough to live. 1 year later, Manhattan glowed in the aftermath of another summer storm. Callista stood at the window of her office at the Aurum and Vale Healthcare Foundation, watching raindrops trace familiar patterns down the glass. So much had changed since that first kiss in the rain. The foundation had grown beyond anyone's expectations. What started as a medical assistance program had blossomed into a comprehensive support network: grief counseling, education funds, support groups, and more. On her desk sat the latest statistics. Over 500 families helped, millions in medical debt cleared, countless lives changed. But it was the letter in her hands that made her heart swell. Written in crayon on purple paper: "Dear Miss Callista, thank you for helping my mommy get better. She can dance in the kitchen again. Love, Lucy, age 7. Good memory?" Callista turned to find Regina in the doorway, holding a stack of papers and wearing a knowing smile. "The best kind," Callista replied, carefully adding Lucy's letter to her memory box, a beautiful wooden chest Thayer had given her for collecting moments like these. "The board meeting is in 10 minutes, Regina reminded her. "They're expecting the quarterly report. They'll be pleased." Callista gathered her materials. "The new corporate partnership program has exceeded projections. Turns out Thayer was right. Companies do want to be part of something real." The boardroom looked different now, warmer somehow, with photos of recipient families lining the walls. Richard Blackwood, once their staunchest opponent, had become one of their strongest advocates after his grandson received foundation support. Callista took her seat at the head of the table, no longer the invisible girl hiding in break rooms. Her engagement ring caught the light, a simple but elegant diamond that Thayer had given her 3 months ago, on another rainy night. "Before we begin," she addressed the board, "I'd like to share something with you." She opened a leather portfolio, her mother's, recovered from storage. My first book will be published next month. All proceeds will go to the foundation. Murmurs of approval filled the room. The story of the CEO and the Invisible Girl had already garnered significant pre-release buzz, though few knew it was their story. Miss Monroe, Richard Blackwood spoke up, I believe I speak for the entire board when I say we were wrong about you, about both of you, what you've built here. The door opened and Thayer walked in. He wasn't supposed to be here. He had meetings across town. But there he was, in a charcoal suit that reminded her of older days, his eyes finding hers, immediately. Sorry to interrupt, he said, though his smile suggested he wasn't sorry at all. But it's raining. The board members exchanged confused glances, but Callista understood perfectly. Her heart raced as she stood. Meeting adjourned, she said softly. If you'll excuse me. She followed Thayer to the elevator, their fingers intertwining naturally. Neither spoke as they descended to the lobby, then stepped out into the summer storm. The rain was warm, like tears of joy. Thayer led her to their spot, the exact place where everything had changed a year ago. I had a meeting with the publishing house today, he said, rain darkening his hair. They let me read the final draft. Callista's breath caught. She hadn't let him read it yet, wanting it to be perfect. And I realized something. He pulled her close, one hand cupping her face. You wrote our past so beautifully, but our future, that's still unwritten. What do you mean? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn notebook, David's journal. I found this pressed between the pages, written the day before he died. The paper was delicate, the ink slightly faded, but the words were clear. Dear Thay, when you find love, real love, don't wait. Don't hide behind board meetings and business deals. Live every moment. Dance in the rain. Kiss her like it's the first time every time. I'll be watching, little brother. Make me proud. Love, David. Tears mixed with rain on Callista's cheeks. There. I don't want to wait anymore, he said softly. The foundation is thriving. Your book is about to change lives. Everything we've built together is beautiful, but I want more. More? Marry me. Not in 3 months like we planned. Not in some big society wedding. Marry me now. Today. In the rain where we first found each other. Her heart stopped. What? He gestured behind her. There, under the building's awning, stood a small group of people. Regina, holding a bouquet of gardenias, her mother's favorite. Richard Blackwood, who apparently was also a licensed officiant, and several foundation families, including little Lucy and her dancing mother. You planned this, she whispered. With help. He brushed wet hair from her face. Your mom wanted Paris. David wanted me to live. I want this. You, me, rain, love forever. What do you want? Callista looked at the small crowd of people whose lives had become intertwined with theirs. At the building where she'd once been invisible. At the man who had seen her when no one else did. I want everything, she said. With you. His smile was brighter than any Paris sunset. They joined their small group under the awning, but insisted on standing just at its edge, letting the rain bless them as they exchanged vows. I promise to kiss you in every rain, Thayer said softly. I promise to dance with you in every kitchen, she replied. I promise to see you, always. I promise to help you live, really live. When Richard pronounced them married, the sun broke, through the clouds creating a rainbow over Manhattan. Little Lucy scattered rose petals while her mother danced in celebration. Later that night, in their penthouse overlooking the city, Callista added 2 new items to her memory box. David's last letter and a rain-speckled marriage certificate. Happy? Thayer asked, wrapping his arms around her. More than happy, she said. Alive. He turned her in his arms, pressing his forehead to hers. Your mother would be proud. of everything you've built, everything you've become. David would be too, she whispered. We did it, They. We learned how to live. Outside, another summer storm rolled in. But this time, the rain wasn't washing away tears or pain or fear. This time it was christening something new. Something real. Something that had started with a kiss in the rain and grown into a love story bigger than either of them had imagined. Because sometimes the most beautiful stories aren't the ones you plan. They're the ones that find you when you're broken, heal you when you're hurting, and teach you that true love isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. Together. 5 years later, the kitchen of the Ellington household buzzed with Sunday morning chaos. Pancake batter splattered the counters, coffee steamed in mismatched mugs, and 3-year-old Rose Eleanor Ellington stood on her stepstool, serious face covered in flour as she helped her mother cook. More chocolate chips, Mama? Rose asked, already reaching for the bag with determined little fingers. Any more and there'll be more chocolate than pancake, Callista laughed, adjusting her daughter's tiny apron, a matching set to her own. Like Daddy likes them. Exactly like Daddy likes them, Callista agreed, dropping a kiss on Rose's dark curls, so like her father's. As if summoned, Thayer appeared in the doorway, home from his morning run. 5 years of marriage had only enhanced his presence, adding touches of silver at his temples that made him even more devastating. He paused, taking in the scene before him with soft eyes. My favorite sight in the world, he said, moving to wrap his arms around them both. My girls making Sunday magic. Rose squealed as he lifted her up, flour clouds puffing around them. Daddy, we're making your favorite. Is that why the chocolate chip bag is almost empty? His eyes met Callista's over their daughter's head, love and amusement dancing in their depths. Like father, like daughter? Callista shrugged, reaching up to brush flour from his jaw. She gets her sweet tooth from you. Their moment was interrupted by the doorbell. Rose wiggled down from Thayer's arms, racing to the door with excited shouts of, They're here! They're here! The monthly Foundation family breakfast had become a tradition. Today's guests included Lucy, now 12, and flourishing, and her mother, along with 2 new families just starting their journey with the Foundation. As their penthouse filled with voices and laughter, Callista watched her dream come to life. The Foundation had grown beyond anything she'd imagined, helping thousands of families across the country. Her 3rd book was hitting shelves next month, and every story she wrote seemed to touch more lives. But it was these moments, pancakes and family and love multiplied, that meant the most. Penny, for your thoughts? Thayer's voice was soft in her ear as they watched Rose show Lucy her new storybooks. Just thinking about rain. Callista smiled, leaning back against him. And how sometimes the storms that feel like they'll break us actually make us whole, he finished, pressing a kiss to her temple. Later, after their guests had gone and Rose was napping, they stood on their balcony watching storm clouds gather over Manhattan. The first drops were just beginning to fall. Dance with me? Thayer held out his hand. That same spark in his eyes. That had changed her life 6 years ago. Callista took his hand, letting him pull her into the rain. As they swayed together, she thought about the framed photos in their living room. Her mother's guidebook opened to her favorite page, David's last journal entry, Rose's first steps, countless moments of a life well lived. We did it, she whispered against his chest. We really learned how to live. No, he corrected softly. We learned how to love. The living part came naturally after that. The rain fell harder, but they kept dancing, their love story still writing itself in every moment, every laugh, every kiss in the rain. Because, true, love isn't just about the big moments, the first kisses, the proposals, the wedding days. It's about all the little moments in between, the pancake mornings, the dance parties in the rain, the way he still looks at her like she's the most real thing in his world, the way she still makes him feel human in a world of corporate armor, the daughter who has her mother's heart and her father's eyes, and both their capacity for love. It's about choosing each other every day, in every weather, and learning that sometimes the most beautiful chapters of life are the ones written in the rain. If you could choose between professional success and true love, which would you choose? Thayer chose love when everyone said he was wrong, and that decision changed not only his life, but the lives of hundreds of other people through the foundation. Have you ever had to choose between reason and heart? How has that choice impacted your life? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you very much for watching to the end. If you like the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share your opinion in the comments. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.